It's the sound of the start of your weekend, the NTT20 betting show sponsored by AK Bets. It's a full slate of EFL action. It's picks from all three leagues, including a nap at longer than 2-1 and, obviously, an attempt to replicate last week's 66-1 goals bet winner. This podcast is very strictly for over 18s only. We ask that everyone listening be gamble aware, so understand the risks that come with gambling. Head to gambleaware.org to brush up on them. You've got to enjoy the sort of drama that we experienced last week.
So many of these pods this season have started with us complaining, moaning about bad beats, beating the starting line. Saturday was just glorious. I think for you and I, sitting, working and watching the games, and when it gets to 5 o'clock and we are inundated by messages on Twitter, by messages on the Not the Top 20 squad on Telegram, of people just basically saying how excited they are that we put up a few winners and they bat them and join us for the ride is incredible.
Exeter 5, Barnet 3.
Yeah, that was easy. Don't worry about that one.
Newport 2, Peterborough 4, with both the 5th and 6th goals of the game being scored in injury time. Posh having had a goal disallowed previously that shouldn't have been disallowed. Newport having had a goal disallowed as well. The whole afternoon was bonkers as well, because we had our double nap winning, Leeds winning to 0, Plymouth Argyle not even taking a shot at Elland Road, and Leeds winning 3-0. I picked Chesterfield -3. They were 3-0 up at home to Horsham, scored a 4th, disallowed. Horsham made it 3-1. So I still managed to find a bad beat in there, despite being very happy.
Fleetwood going off 6-4. I put them up at 7-2.
Yeah, Coventry winning at Borough, my next best, draw no bet. The only real shame was El Loco. Didn't make much of an impact.
Did he have a shot?
I don't think he did, to be fair. The 16-1 half point, 66-1 half point means that the goals bet section of this pod is now 54 points up on the season. We've done 12 weeks of a goal selection, 9 weeks without a winner, 3 winners, or 3 weeks with winners, a 12-1, a 10-1, and then last week was, given it was half a point on each, plus 41 points on the week for that goals bet.
We should say as well, we after the result on Saturday, and also I put up a correct score winner on the AK Bets column as well at 6-1 on Sunday. So it was a good weekend all around for us. And on our WhatsApp group with AK and the team, we did kind of say, like 6-1 winner, is that all right? And they seemed fine with it, but they also did confirm that quite a lot of people did back it with AK Bets, which is great to see. And we should say, again, like we're going to try and repeat the trick today with an over 4.5 double. They've gone best price again. So do make sure if you haven't signed up to AK Bets, they are putting all of our selections up, which is fairly insulting, up at kind of best price in the market. So you are missing a trick and missing out on a few quid for every winner if you're not backing them there.
For those who listened to the end last week, you know that I wished you a terrible weekend. I hoped that you had one of the worst weekends that you've ever had, and that we might have the same. And it worked, didn't it? So apologies in advance. It's nothing personal, but I'm not superstitious. But in the words of Eli Manning, I am a little bit stitious. So I'm probably going to be wishing you guys a terrible weekend for some weeks now. Time for our naps, our best bets of the EFL weekend. And someone's left the door open again, George. Chilly, isn't it?
Oh, winter remains here. Still not really getting very cold in the UK, but we're going to stick with this winter that's been going on for about 2 months now. As you say, last week we got up a double nap in winter with Leeds winning 2-0 everything, where not only did they win 2-0 goals, but they won 2-0 shots, which was pretty mad. And I think the value to do it again at home to QPR on Saturday, even money, AK Bets our best price anywhere. Better than anywhere else, to be said as well. 10 to 11 is the best you're going to find anywhere else. And this is just Leeds, who again, in my mind, yes, they came unstuck in midweek against Millwall. But even in that game, having lost the game 1-0, Millwall created very, very little against them. And Leeds at home, to me, are a side who consistently just stop the opposition from creating anything of note whatsoever. You look at the only goals they've conceded at home, if we can ignore that opening day 3-3 draw against Portsmouth, which we've spoken about a lot. You've got the 1-0 defeat to Burnley, where Koleosho scored from range. And you've got the 2-1 win over Watford, where they were 2-0 up after 5 minutes. And that is kind of one of those occasions against a Watford side who scored a lot of goals, where when you're 2-0 up, I think it's inevitable that you're probably going to drop off a touch. They didn't against Argyle. Despite being 3 goals up after 35 minutes or so, they were able to keep being by far the dominant side, and Argyle barely had a touch in their half. And they're up against a QPR side who, for me, are just really struggling at the moment. It's pretty bleak for Martí Cifuentes. They were beaten 4-1 in midweek against Borough, but prior to that, they'd drawn a blank in 2 0-0 draws. They were beaten 2-0 in their previous away game before the Burnley 0-0 draw. They haven't scored in an away game since the 1-1 draw against Sheffield Wednesday back in September the 14th, so 3 games in a row. Given how good this Leeds side are at preventing the opposition from creating opportunities, given how settled this Leeds side are now, like having had loads of injuries, we're now seeing a consistent back four with Tanaka and Rothwell being a really effective partnership sitting in front of them. And in a weird way, in like a kind of variance kind of way, I kind of like the fact that they conceded in midweek, despite only conceding 0.3 XG, because you are going to concede the odd goal from games where you don't really deserve to, but realistically, teams aren't going to create very little and score consistently. So I think this is a worse bet than last weekend. I think that even money that we got last week was crazy, and it went off a lot shorter, because when we spoke on Thursday, they were 5 on to win the game. They were like 7 on 8 on by the time they kicked off. This time around, I doubt we'll see them go off such a short price, but just because it's still the same price last week. I mean, last week probably should have been 8-13, 4-6. I mean, based on what happened in the game, it should have been 5 on, but you're never going to get that. I still think there's a lot of value here at even money, so I'm happy to repeat the trick. And I think the Leeds are going to win 2-0 at home for, they've done it already this season against Sheffield United, against Coventry, against Hull, against Argyle, and I think they'll do it again on Saturday.
Yeah, it's my next best. Leeds win 2-0 evens. I thought it would be my nap, but there is just something that I think is slightly better value to my eye anyway. But wholeheartedly agree with you that even money is still a worthy price here. QPR are not only low in confidence, low in form, they're struggling in terms of fitness and availability as well. In midweek against Middlesbrough, you've got Sam Field, their defensive midfielder, having to play at centre-back because of Clark Salter's continued injury issues and a lack of depth in the squad. They've got massive issues in the left-back position, where the relatively dependable Kenneth Parle is also injured. Santos played in midweek and got absolutely torn to shreds in the first half, was subbed off. Ilias Chair came off at half-time, and Cifuentes said he was in a lot of pain in his knee. Doesn't bode that well for an appearance on a Saturday, I would suggest. Michael Frey has that calf injury, which means poor Zan Salah, who joined in the summer, is still ploughing a lone furrow up front. He, so far this season, can't hit a barn door, and I wince as I say that, because he will now likely be the QPR player to ruin this bet, if anyone does. Inexperience both in midfield, in terms of the youngster Morgan playing in midfield with Madsen and Varane, who are both struggling to adapt to different extents at championship level. They're really up against it at the moment, and it's hard to imagine them laying too many gloves, shall we say, on Leeds.
How many gloves have they got?
I think they might struggle to lay one glove.
Wow.
On Leeds. Their away form in terms of generating chances isn't great. Looking at their FB match logs, 0.5 XG at Derby and Blackburn, 0.1 XG generated at Burnley. That's more in line with what I would expect here. They've hit 3 shots on target or fewer in 5 of their 6 away games. Leeds have faced 2 shots on target or fewer in 5 of their 7 home games. So that's my next best. And your nap, my nap, which I consider to be slightly better value, is Huddersfield win 2-0 at Crawley Town. This is at 12-5 with AK bets, 3.4 joint best price on the market. A Huddersfield team that I think will be, and will have been for some time, well, since Friday about 10 p.m, itching to put that 1-0 defeat to Tamworth behind them. They were victims of a cup set and they weren't very impressive. They huffed and they puffed after going 1-0 down from a keeper error from a long throw, but they couldn't blow the door down. I still think overall they're in decent shape. I believe in them, and particularly in terms of being a strong, physically strong team and a strong defence. They've kept 6 clean sheets this season in 13 games. They've won 5 of their 13 games 2-0. And they're away at Crawley, a team who have drawn a blank in exactly half of their 14 league games this season. 7 times they failed to score, 6 defeats to 0 in their 14 league games this season. They've got this issue where they take a lot of shots, Crawley, but they take them from range. and it's not really working for them. They have the lowest XG per shot number in League One, so the chances that they generate are of the lowest quality on average. They have the highest percentage of shots from outside the box in League One, 47% of their shots coming from outside the box. The fourth highest percentage of shots being blocked at 42%. So you can see they're taking a lot of long shots, not a lot of shots within the box, and a high proportion being blocked as well. So just not doing well enough to break down defences. And Huddersfield have formed this season to basically completely shut out much better opposition than Crawley. They've completely shut out, not just keeping a clean sheet, but basically restricting the opposition to next to nothing against Wrexham, against Barnsley, against Bolton, against Peterborough. These are some of the best teams in the league. It's only really Birmingham and Blackpool and I guess Rotherham, albeit Huddersfield were down to 10 men at that point, who've generated a lot of chances against them. There's a massive gulf in player quality between these two squads as well. All of that leads me to thinking that Huddersfield win to 0 at 12-5 is the best bet of the weekend. With AK Bets, that one at 12-5. What's your next best?
My next best is Wycombe to beat Wigan. Two teams that sound very similar, which is confusing when you're talking about them in quick succession. Wycombe are such an interesting side where for so long the numbers looked fairly unsustainable to me. Like you look at the games that they played, you look at the fixtures that come up against them, and even though the wins were so impressive, there was no denying, if you look at the way that their fixtures have fallen since losing to Wrexham and Birmingham in the opening 2 weekends of the season, they haven't played a side that currently sit above 8th. And they've played at home, they played 13th, 14th, 20th, 21st and 22nd. Away from home, they've played 16th, 17th, 18th and 24th. So in my mind, you can appreciate the job that Matt Bloomfield is doing. You can see how impressive they've been, whilst also factoring in probably a drop-off at some point. And then Tuesday happens. And Tuesday happens where they go to Stockport, a Stockport side that I still maintain will finish very near the playoffs, if not in them, who are, I would say, are a proven consistent quality in League Two last season, who have players that we know are very capable at the level. And Wycombe went to Stockport on Tuesday and completely dismantled them. In one of the most dominant performances that we've seen. They won the game 5-0. They restricted Stockport to just 4 shots and an XG of 0.2, despite taking the lead within 10 minutes, away from home. Like, to do that to a good side is, to my mind, just a phenomenal show of strength and ability. That means we have to take notice of them now. And in my mind, they are becoming the team. And they might drop off. It might be the case when they come up against better teams in the league. They are unable to replicate this as they did against Stockport. But in my mind, they are now the team that you have to look at as being the ones who are the closest to Birmingham. And you look at the XG ratio table since the beginning of September, and they're clear. They're clear of Birmingham. They are the data darlings of the league, in which opposition strength will play a big part in that. So even though I probably wouldn't be rushing to back them again if they were, against one of the better teams in the league, but they're going to a Wigan side who I'm very happy to get against, whose attacking issues are a massive problem for them now. You look at their games so far this season, they've only played 6 home games and they've failed to score in 3 of them. They've only won 2 of those games. One of those was against a Crawley side who were massively struggling at the time. This is a game, there is a slight nagging doubt in my mind that Wycombe have played midweek in a league game and Wigan haven't, which isn't ideal in terms of rest time, and it's been an away game too. But I think that off the back of what happened on Tuesday night, Wycombe will be absolutely desperate to get back on the pitch as soon as possible, because if they replicate that kind of performance on Tuesday at Wigan, then they run out easy winners yet again. I've got no doubt. They managed to stunt and blunt a much better attacking force in Stockport than they're going to come up against on Saturday against Wigan. So if you had told me 6 weeks ago that I'd be backing Wycombe at 7-5 away at Wigan, I'd have been very surprised. But I think given what we're seeing at the moment, and given how good Wycombe have been and the quality of their performances, and a range of players in great veins of form in Richard Kone and Fred Onyedinma in particular, I think they should have too much for Wigan on the day.
For anyone looking to sign up to AK Bets this weekend, make sure that if you do, you use promo code NTT100. The link is in the show notes of the podcast. And if you click the link, it will automatically apply the promotion code. The offer is, as such, if your first bet is an accumulator on football with a minimum of 4 selections, AK Bets will boost the profit gained on that initial bet by 25% in the form of a free bet up to a value of £100. Further T's and C's accessible on the website. Just click the link in the show notes to take advantage of that sign-up offer from AK Bets. My goal scorer is an old favourite, an old winner, Alassane Jatta of Notts County. No exaggeration to say he's the first name that I check every single week at the moment. I really do, because he hasn't let me down so far. He was a winner for me at this exact price at Chesterfield a few weeks back, just a shade less than 3-1. And he's the player with the highest non-penalty XG in the EFL. He's the player that is getting the most chances per 90 in the EFL. He plays for a team that create a lot of chances and score a lot of goals. He is a threat with his head on account of his size. He's a threat with his feet. Quite a good finisher. He's a handful inside the box when Notts build and they keep the pressure on, and they look to deliver crosses, often Crawley from the half space or one of the wing-backs. And he's tall, he's a threat with his head, he scores headers. He's also a massive handful running in behind. A couple of goals this season have just come from Notts going long when someone's pressed them too high. Bass, with his big kick, finds Jatta, and he's just so disruptive for centre-backs at this level. They struggle to handle him. He has scored since joining in January 11 league goals at 0.75 goals per 90. His shot conversion is very good, shows that he's been, so far, a very dependable finisher, scoring with 24% of his shots. And in 8 of his 15 League Two starts so far, any time has landed, which is just better than half in, admittedly, still a relatively small sample size of 15 starts. But it has landed in just over half of his starts. And this price suggests basically a 26-27% chance of Jatta scoring any time. Now, part of this is because Notts are a chunky price to win away at Doncaster, one of the best teams in the league and a solid home team. But no one's watching Donny this season and thinking that they are, first and foremost, a solid defence. They're a very good, pretty gung-ho attacking team. Their issues are, if they have them, at the back, and that is what undermines them in certain games. They're missing Richard Wood through injury, and the other centre-backs are Lowu and McGrath and Tom Anderson. These aren't terrible players. I wouldn't pretend that they are, but they are League Two defenders. They are inconsistent. Some of them have a rick in them. Anderson and Alowu, in particular. McGrath struggled with direct play against Harrogate in that game that was televised. So I think Jatta's got a really good chance of getting a few good opportunities here, and I think just having this player at 11-4 is a worthy goal scorer pick. Where are you going this week?
Going to MK Dons, actually.
Lovely.
I'm not actually, but I'm looking at MK Dons and I'm going to back Scott the Hulk Hogan.
Nice.
Score anytime at 5-2.
Scotty too hotty.
5-2. MK Dons are at home to Swindon Town, who, as we know, have not had a particularly fun time of it so far this season. Ian Holloway's the new manager. He's got off to a pretty good start in the Cups with an FA Cup win and an EFL Trophy win in midweek. I would say that even if that is the case, a switch from Mark Kennedy to Ian Holloway has to be a good thing in terms of open games and what we will see at both ends. And an MK Dons side who, under Scott Lindsay, should be a team who are eminently capable of creating chances and scoring goals. Despite not having a particularly good time of it so far this season themselves, they've only failed to score once at home this season in a 1-0 defeat at home to, if not the best team, then one of the best teams in the league in Port Vale. In Scott Hogan, they've signed a player who, as we spoke about on the Monday pod, I believe will score a stupid amount of goals at League Two level if he is to play through the middle, which is what he's doing right now. He's already scored 2, both of them basically, well, one was a proper tap-in, one was a goal scored from a rebound after quite an uncharacteristic run through the middle. But basically, he's their main goal threat for a team who are odds on to win the game, who have a history of racking up big scores with a manager who's relentlessly attacking up against a Swindon side who've struggled, and Ian Holloway, who is himself, an attacking manager where the defensive side of things may drop off a little bit. I think 5-2 is a huge, huge price for Hogan to find the score sheet on Saturday.
Yeah, my long shot is another goal scorer pick. It's another returning goal scorer pick. This one wasn't a winner, but it was enough to get me pretty excited about the value on offer for Jordan Thomas of Cheltenham. I think this one was 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, at Carlisle, and I felt a little hard done by, shall we say, that it wasn't a winner at 13-2. He had 4 or 5 good efforts. Harry Lewis, who he'd highlighted as a bit of an issue in goal for Carlisle, ended up chucking one in from Thomas's mate, Ethan Archer. It wasn't a winner, but it did feel like I came close. That was at 13-2. I think for them to be at home this time, at home to Bromley, and him at 6-1 still represents value here. mentioned a few times that it feels to me like Flynn in making this tactical tweak from a really stodgy, bleak 3-5-2 to a 4-3-3 with Thomas in on the right in a role that really suits him, which didn't exist in the previous system. Ethan Archer, who's playing really well off the left-hand side of the attack. It's just working a lot better. Archer benefits from having Payne, the right back, who's much better going forward than he is defensively. And we're seeing that it just looks like quite a potent combo down that right side, and it allows Thomas to basically come and play quite centrally and get dangerous shots off. He's a massive, high-volume shooter who I also think has good technique. And I think at League 2 level, that is a lovely combo. So, Jordan Thomas at 6-1 to score for Cheltenham at home to Bromley, I think is value. I thought Cheltenham might be a shade of value themselves here, but Bromley, I just have this idea that they're still quite a tough nut to crack. And I was so down on Cheltenham. I don't want to go too far the other way just because I'm appreciative of the system change. I think it has led to some better performances, but I think Bromley's... Yeah, I just think they're a bit of an awkward opponent. So I think my preferred option than backing Cheltenham is to go for the player I think might be their biggest goal threat, 6-1 to score. Jordan Thomas for Cheltenham against Bromley, joint best price with AK Bets. Long shot from way downtown.
Yeah, trying to kind of replicate what we did last week with the win to 0 between Leeds and Plymouth, where Plymouth Argyle on the road are just an abhorrent football team. And I don't understand. I've never really seen anything like this before. Where at home they're kind of capable-ish, won a game midweek in the Championship. Yet away from home, their results so far this season are Leeds, they lost 3-0, Burnley 1-0, Millwall 1-0, West Bromwich Albion 1-0, Sheffield Wednesday 4-0, Cardiff 5-0, drew 1-0 with QPR. When you look at the underlying numbers, they basically never attack or shoot away from home. So the basis of my long shot wants to be finding a way to get with Plymouth Argyle not scoring a goal. Derby are understandably really short to win this game, but despite that, 1-0 is still 13-2. This is a scoreline we've already seen 3 times. Argyle lose by away from home. Even against Leeds on Saturday, having gone 3-0 down, I guess they kind of didn't get beaten, but didn't get thrashed in the way that some of us probably saw coming later on. I was kind of torn between the 1-0 or the 2-0. Derby average 1.2 XG4 at home so far this season. It was kind of a toss-up, but I fell on the side of it being, given this is a scoreline we see in Argyle games fairly regularly. But, for Derby to be heavily odds on to win the game, but 1-0 in my mind and 2-0 being the likely scorelines, I wouldn't put anyone off backing 2, but for the purpose of this, I've fallen on the 1-0 bet.
Yeah, I like it. I was, and I think this really lends support to this pick. I was looking for ways of getting with Derby and against Argyle in this game. At one point I was looking for goal scorers, and poor Jerry Yates plays up front for Derby, takes less than a shot per game, which is pretty unusual for a striker. Obviously scored last night a gift, a through ball from Jack Rodoni of Coventry, and he did take it very well, but he had the second lowest XG per 90 of any striker in the Championship, or still does. Only Ryan Hardy, who plays for Argyle, has a lower XG per 90 of strikers in the EFL. So I was put off a little bit working out who to back from a Derby perspective, but I did watch that Argyle game, and one thing that stood out to me was they've got Sorinola and Barley Mumba playing right back and left back. I mean, those two players are max 5'7", maybe 5'8". They are both not that strong defensively and certainly not that strong physically. And in Derby, you have the team who basically have rugby players on the wing, Caden Jackson and Nathaniel Mendez-Lang. And I just feel very strongly that is going to be a real avenue of attack for Derby. But Jackson and Mendez-Lang themselves are quite inconsistent in terms of goal threat. So I'm very positive on them hurting Argyle. Yeah. I'm also positive that their attacking players are unlikely to absolutely rack up the goals. So 1-0.
Thank you.
Sounds pretty perfect.
Maybe we should always just justify each other's picks afterwards.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
For just to give us a little big up. We're going to try and recreate last week's goal bet. We're just going for an over 4.5 goals double. League games feel less likely to me to go over 5.5 than your average cup game, which can really get away from teams, as we saw with some of those extra goals late on against Barnet. But I did some stats work just to check that EFL games also have decent chance of going over 4.5 goals. 12.5% of all EFL games this season have ticked over 4.5 goals. So a 1 in 8 chance. 4.5 games per weekend that would play out as if it's a 1 in 8 chance. And so I thought it'd be quite fun just for a couple of weeks to set ourselves the task of finding 2 of those 4.5 games per weekend that might tick over 4.5 goals. Who are you going with for our over 4.5 goals double, which is at the very familiar 66-1 price point that we hit last week?
Wrexham, Mansfield for me. I guess, with Wrexham, it hasn't really been the case for their games recently that they've had loads of goals, albeit there was a 2-2 draw with Charlton last time. But they're a team that under Phil Parkinson in the National League, in League 2 and now in League 1 often see games with loads of goals. We've had a 4-1 against Northampton early this season, a 3-2 against Wycombe, both covering the over 4.5. Both of those at home. I think home is always the key with Wrexham to make sure that that's where the goals are coming, because away from home their style changes quite a lot. And similar with Mansfield and Nigel Clough. Last season we had that 9-2 against Harrogate. I think we had 4-1 wins away from home. This season already we've seen a 3-3 against Burton and a 4-1 defeat at Lincoln as well. So basically 2 sides where games can often spiral into mayhem. So they seem a fairly obvious matchup here, albeit only 2 goals in the 2 games between them last season. I think given their good starts this time around, we should see attacking threat at the forefront rather than it being a bit of a 6-pointer between 2 promotion candidates.
Yeah, I'm adding Stoke and Millwall to this. And that's because Stoke under Chicho Palak are open as hell. And look, it's a tactical style that's the way that he's approaching these games. They're obviously off the back of 2 straight wins and a 2-0 win against Rovers. One of those 2-0 wins where when you watch the game back and you analyse the numbers, you end up basically being really unconvinced by the winning team, which is unfortunate because I'd like to throw some support behind what Palak's doing, and I do see the reasoning for him approaching it like this. And as I said on the Monday pod, I think if Stoke can click and if they can continue to develop and gel in this style, there is a high ceiling to this sort of football at this level, but it's not easy, and it does leave you open at the back. This Stoke team, since Palak's appointment, have faced the most shots in the Championship, so they are not tight defensively. The clean sheets that they are keeping have been thanks to their incredible Swedish goalkeeper Victor Johansson. But good goalkeepers, they're obviously a bit of an issue for a goals bet, but they don't save everything. A good goalkeeper, can have a bad day at the office. And I think this Millwall team, who come in with 4 wins in a row, 4 1-0 wins in a row, I just think it's a really interesting matchup of styles here, where Millwall have proven themselves this season to be a genuine threat from open play and from set pieces. Their open play threat has been mainly in transition, which suits the style that they play, because they're not interested in having the ball, the lowest possession level or number in the league. But they do attack quickly with Romain Esse and Duncan Watmore in particular, a real threat from wide forward areas. And they're a massive threat from set pieces, with big Jake Cooper winning everything. He's got a goal and an assist in the last 2 games. So when it comes to Millwall hurting Stoke, I can easily see how they might cause Stoke some big issues. But with Stoke at home, in particular, with that home advantage, and with their attacking quality, and like Million Manhoof and Kumas and Moran and Tom Cannon, those players are starting to come to the boil, I think. So I think it's quite a nice little combo we've got here, where Stoke will attack with leisure and with quality. I do believe that, and I'd be surprised if Millwall keep a 5th clean sheet in a row. But I can easily see Millwall hurting them as well. So, yeah, I guess 4 1-0 wins in a row for Millwall might make an over 4.5 goals pick look a little bit nuts. But I guess that's also why it's about 15-2. And, we're looking for a long shot here, 66-1 double. And it's Stoke, Millwall and Wrexham, Mansfield to go over 4.5 goals each. You can back that on the special section of the football part of the AK Bets website, easily signposted. And they've built that for you already, 66-1 available. Well, that's a bit of fun.
I loved it.
Recap those selections, will you?
Oh, yes. Leeds to win to 0 at home to QPR as my nap at even money. My next best is Wycombe to beat Wigan at 7-5. My goal scorer is Scott Hogan to score any time for MK Dons at home to Swindon. My long shot is Derby County to beat Plymouth Argyle 1-0. Correct score 13-2. All of those best prices from our sponsors in the market. AK Bets.
Have a great time in Milton Keynes.
Thank you.
Huddersfield win to 0 is my nap at 12-5. Leeds to win to 0 at even money, my next best. My goal scorer pick is Alassane Jatta of Notts County at 11-4. Long shot Jordan Thomas anytime. He's Cheltenham's right winger, 6-1 at home to Bromley. And the goals bet over 4.5 goals double at 66-1 is Stoke Millwall in the Championship and Wrexham Mansfield in League One. Thank you to AK Bets for sponsoring this podcast. As for you, listener, watcher, if that's what you like on the YouTube, I hope that this weekend you step on some Lego and or stub your toe. Maybe both. I hope that you accidentally drink your coffee with the wrong kind of milk and you hate it.
I don't drink milk in my coffee.
Oh, cool.
What do you?
You're hard.
What do you?
I hope that you...
You had a mocha yesterday.
I hope that someone you love mocks you in a way that makes you sad. I hope you have the worst weekend of all time. And I reckon we might as well. Thanks and go well.
Go badly, surely.